The NBA All-Star reserves were just announced, and honestly, I'm making it a little heated in this video because we got some absolutely crazy snubs. You obviously know the starters with Luka, KD, SGA, LeBron, Jokic, and then in the East we have Giannis, Embiid, Halliburton, Dame, and Jason Tatum. I have a whole nother video on that. You guys can check that out if you want. We just found out the reserves, and the most glaring thing, I'm gonna get right into it, the biggest snub, there's basically two, is from the Sacramento Kings. And it's not even just one player. I'm not gonna say it's De'Aaron Fox or it's Domantas Sabonis, but the fact that neither of those players are in the All-Star game is crazy to me. Like, when I saw that happen live, I was actually speechless because I thought De'Aaron Fox was a lock for the All-Star game, and pretty much Sabonis too. I thought they were both locks to be in the All-Star game. But the fact that neither of them are in the All-Star game absolutely blows my mind. And you guys can see Paul George and Karl-Anthony Towns were pretty much the last two guys that got in for the West. I believe those were the wild card picks. And when I made my picks, I did my reserves as well. I know you can't really vote for them, but I did that for a separate video. I had Fox and Sabonis not even in as reserves. I had them in as, you know, Fox as the backup guard with Ant, although it does make sense for Curry to get over Fox, but still, Fox should have been in regardless, whether he's a backup guard or he is that wild card spot off the bench. And then I also had Sabonis as a backup big, not even a wild card. Like, I didn't even think it was that close. So Paul George grabs a wild card spot. Now, to me, that's interesting because the Clippers are one of the best teams in the NBA. I think they're either third or fourth in the West. So yeah, they've been going crazy. They deserve to have an all-star or two. And that's the argument. Really good teams should have multiple all-stars in the game. So they gave Paul George the edge, but the Kings are fifth in the West and they don't have a singular one. So to me, that doesn't make much sense. You either got to take out Paul George or Karl-Anthony Towns. Again, the Timberwolves, one of the best teams in the NBA this year. They should probably have multiple all-stars, but does that mean the Kings should have zero? I don't think so. So I think that they should have had either Paul George or Cat out of the All-Star game in place of De'Aaron Fox and honestly Sabonis. So I think that Fox should have made it over Paul George, and I think that Sabonis should have made it over Cat. Now, if there's some diehard Paul George fans watching, or there's some diehard Cat fans watching, maybe Timberwolves fans, Clippers fans, whatever, I'm not saying that they don't deserve to be All-Stars. I mean, I kind of am. Honestly, the All-Star game roster should be extended because there's too many guys that deserve to make it. But I think when it comes down to it, and if you have to pick who are going to be your 12 guys on each side, I think the Sacramento Kings absolutely need to have a guy on this team. And that is my take. Whether you want to put Fox in the team or Sabonis, I think it's close. I don't think it really matters. You just got to have one of them or both. I personally think both should be on it, but that's just crazy to me. Before we get into the East, because there's a lot of crazy things that we have to talk about with the East reserves, let's finish up with the West. So there was three guys that made the All-Star team that I didn't even have making the All-Star team. The first one is Devin Booker. And you guys are probably saying, Solo, what are you saying? You didn't have Devin Booker in the All-Star game? I didn't, because when the voting period ended, he had not gone on that insane stretch of games. And so I don't think that matters. Now, yeah, it makes sense. Devin Booker should be an all-star. He's averaging like 28 points per game. He just put up 60 the other night. I think he had another game with 40, maybe 2 games with 40. He's been on an absolute tear. But when the voting ended, I thought, you know, D-Book should probably not be in. Again, I had Fox and Sabonis, and my third guy was Alperen Sengun, which I'm not too upset that he didn't make it because it's just so tough. But I think Alperen Sengun had a really good shot to get in, but again, Fox and Sabonis got snubbed. So Sengun, I think, pretty much had no shot. So I had no Devin Booker, I had no Paul George, and I had no Cat. But those were like my first three guys off. Like, I had a little snubs tier. Those three were off. Devin Booker was the first one off, which I really wanted to put him in, but I decided to go with Sengun instead of him, which maybe that doesn't make as much sense, but I'm just a big Sengun. I'm also a big Devin Booker guy, so I don't know really what I was doing there. Something else I want to say is that you can't get mad at Paul George for this. I watch his podcast a lot. I listen to his podcast. I think he's a great guy, a great player. I think some people might be mad at him for essentially taking these guys' spots. De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, Sengun, Wemby, whoever. Paul George, Cat, those are the two guys that I'm a little bit questionable on out west. Now we have the Eastern Conference All-Stars and the reserves. And there's two players that made it that I didn't have making it in my voting and my picks. And both of these guys were pretty much the first snubs off of my list, and that is Paolo Banchero. And the argument for him is that the Magic are pretty much, I think they fell down in the seeding. They used to be like a top 4 team in the East. I think now they're like 8th or 7th or something like that. But Paolo Banchero is the leader of the Magic, and they didn't have the highest of expectations, but he's been leading them. And so the Magic should probably have an all-star, and Paolo would be that guy. So that's the argument for him. Although he was a snub on mine. He was the like first or second guy off, but I didn't have him on my list. The next guy is Jaylen Brown, and the Celtics are pretty much the best team in the league. They did just lose to the Lakers without AD and Bron, which that's another story. Maybe I'll make a video on that. I don't know. That's just absurd. But the argument for him is the Celtics are the best team in the league. They should probably have 2, maybe even 3 all-stars or players in the all-star game. And so the second guy would be Jaylen Brown for the Celtics. And I'm okay with Jaylen Brown being in the all-star game. I am now. I'm okay with it. But the 2 guys that I thought should have been in is going to be, one, Trae Young. So I would have swapped out Julius Randle, who again is now hurt, and an injury has nothing to do with you not being an all-star. But I think if you compare Trae Young's season and Julius Randle's season, I think you could give Trae Young the nod. The guy's averaging 27 points per game, 11 assists per game, and his true shooting numbers are pretty solid. He's shooting better than Tyrese Maxey. So if you really want to make the argument, you could say Trae Young over Tyrese Maxey, which I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say Trae Young over Julius Randle, who Julius Randle, I don't even know if he was in that little wild card spot where position goes out the window. But even if he was, you can swap him to the forward and put Paolo in the wild card spot and just say Trae over Paolo. I don't know, because I think both of them should not be in this all-star game with the reserves. Do they deserve it? Yeah, they do. But the team should have more spots. That's what should happen. There should probably be 30 all-stars, not 24, because when the all-star game first was the thing, I think there was like 8 teams in the league, or maybe a few more. But you know what I'm saying? That was back in like 1950 when the NBA was first starting. And so talent has just gotten so crazy, and there's just way more teams now. There's way more teams. There should be 30 all-stars, because it's just crazy when you got to say that a guy like Trae Young is not going to be an all-star. He wasn't last year. He wasn't an all-star last year when he put up 26 and 10. Now he puts up 27 and 11. And I get that team success matters, and the Hawks are a fringe playing team. I get it. But like, I don't know, bro. Does it matter that much to where a guy's averaging 27 and 11 essentially in back-to-back years and he still can't get into the all-star game? I say Trae Young over Randle, and then the guy that I would put in over Paolo Banchero, who I thought was for sure an all-star, is Scotty Barnes from the Toronto Raptors. And if you look at the numbers, sure, I guess it doesn't look crazy when you stack him up against Paolo or Julius Randle, but Scotty's averaging like 20, 21 points per game. So I guess, yeah, if you don't watch the games or you haven't been too tapped in, then yeah, that looks not the best. 20, 21, it's solid, right? He also averages like 9 boards a game. For a forward, no one really expected that from him. So he's exceeding expectations on the glass. I think his assist is like 5 per game, something like that. His shooting numbers aren't anything crazy. They're solid, but defensively, Scotty Barnes has been insane. He's getting like 3 stocks a game. I think maybe even more than that. He gets a ton of steals, tons of blocks. He's really good defensively. And again, I think to these voters, potentially team success came into play again, because when you're going to put Paolo in over Scotty, maybe they're factoring in team success. They probably are, because I personally would go Scotty. And then again, Trae Young or Maxey, or Trae Young or Julius Randle, or whoever you want to compare him to. Jaylen Brown, I think, again, the voters are going off of team success, which they should. The winning teams should have a lot of all-stars, but what's the breaking point? You know what I mean? How, like is that the breaking point? Trae Young, like, you can put up 27 and 11, but if you're basically just in the play-in, like, that's not good enough. Like, how good do you have to play on a bad team, like a non-playoff team? Like, let's say the Grizzlies and Ja Morant. Let's say that, I don't know, they aren't in the playoffs, right? And Ja Morant's putting up 30 and 7 and 5. Does he get in with that? Like, at what point do players on bad teams get in with crazy numbers? And again, I can already see the comments. I haven't even posted the video yet, and I already know what you guys are gonna say. You're gonna be like, bro, Solo, you think Paul George shouldn't be an all-star? You think Cat shouldn't be an all-star? You think Julius Randle, Paolo shouldn't be an all-star? I mean, when it comes down to it, I guess not, but they should, because the all-star rosters should be bigger. It shouldn't be 24 players. because again, that's what they were doing in 1950. It should be like 30 players. And I think that Adam Silver next year does make the change. And real quick, let me pull up a tweet that I put out. So I tweeted this earlier, and if you guys don't follow me on Twitter, make sure to follow me because I'm always tweeting out stuff about the NBA. I said there have been 24 NBA All-Star roster spots since the beginning of time. After seeing all these stars get snubbed, it's time to do what's right and change it to 30 All-Stars per season at the NBA. I was going to tag Adam Silver, but I don't think he has a Twitter account. And if he did, he wouldn't have seen it. We don't gotta say probably. He would not have seen my tweet. But honestly, I think the NBA and a lot of these leagues are more in tune with the communities and just social media, and you got the player associations and stuff like that. I honestly think if I had to pick, I think the All-Star game does go to an increased roster, whether that's 28 players, whether that's 30. I think 30 is the perfect number. Add 3 players to each team, and that pretty much covers all the real All-Star snubs from this year. I think we're gonna see that next year. If not next year, maybe they have it implemented or what do you call it, like in motion to be in the system 2-3 years down the line. I think that should be coming soon. Then I also put out this tweet with the craziest snubs from this year's All-Star game. Of course, we have the 4 that I talked about: De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, Trae Young, and Scotty. I think they're all having All-Star caliber seasons. Honestly, all of these guys are. I think Alperen Sengun deserved it, but it's just hard to get him a spot. Lauri Markkanen too. No one's really talking about Lauri Markkanen. He's having a really good year, and the Jazz, at least to me, are exceeding expectations. They're having a better year than, you know, the Lakers, the Warriors. As of right now, they are a play-in team. No one expected that. In a stacked West, no one thought the Jazz were going to be there, and that's pretty much solely because of Lauri Markkanen. I mean, they got some other guys like Sexton's exceeding expectations, but Markkanen's the main guy. James Harden having a great year. I could see why he's not an all-star, but he definitely deserves to be in the conversation. And Wemby putting up 20 and 10 and 3.5 blocks per game is insane. The NBA has to do something about this. Please, for the love of God, increase the roster spots. Sub up if you guys haven't. We're on the road to 2K. Turn on noties and click the video pop up on your screen right here if you haven't seen it yet.